help desk software, payment software, email marketing tools, CMS and blogging tools, SEO tools, deal management tracking, pipeline tracking. You don't need more tools to get more out of your business. You just need HubSpot. Their all-on-one customer platform is a dream come true for every member of your team, with best-in-class campaigns and workflows to generate more leads for marketing, category-leading pipeline management to help sales close more deals, powerful AI chatbots, and a knowledge base to help service teams scale, and it's built to deliver results and revenue faster to help your business grow. So dump the disconnected tools and the chaos that comes with them. Discover what HubSpot's all-on-one platform can do to streamline your business. Visit HubSpot.com to grow better today. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, June 11th. I'm John Weigell here with Sara Friedman, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. The idea of freezing people has been on the docket for quite some time in the science world, but right now it's shaping up. Startup Cradle Healthcare Co. is one of many companies that's working on stopping biology with intense cold and raised $48 million of funding to do it. Sure, this could be cool for the purposes of an Austin Powers-esque preservation technique, but what else could Cryonics help us with, and why should we pay attention to the field so much? We'll chat about that in a bit, but first let's give you the hits and headlines today in business and tech. Starting us off today, Moderna said its combination COVID and influenza vaccine, which is being tested on 8,000 patients in a phase 3 trial, is more effective than standalone shots. Next, over to Japan, Tokyo Disney Resort opened its $2 billion expansion featuring new Frozen, Tangled, and Peter Pan attractions. The theme park expects all the hoopla to draw about 29 million visitors this year, and that's great for the Japanese tourism industry. Over to space, Virgin Galactic brought 4 tourists to the edge of outer space on the Virgin VSS Unity spaceplane's 7th and last commercial flight. The company, though, is rolling out new Delta spacecrafts in 2026. So if you didn't get to go to space before, now's your chance. Over to the movie business, at the box office, Bad Boys 4 earned $104.6 million globally and $56 million domestically here in the U.S., finally marking a win for Hollywood after Furiosa and Fall Guy notoriously had a bad time of it. And finally, Oklahoma City Council removed height restrictions in order to move forward with a project that, at 1,907 feet, could be the tallest skyscraper in the United States, and that's a reason to visit Oklahoma, I guess. Okay, so today we're talking about cryonics, and specifically the company Cradle Healthcare Co. that's looking to take the freezing science to the next level. So Sara, first off here, who is behind Cradle?
Yeah, so according to Bloomberg, Cradle was founded by Laura Deming and Hunter Davis, and notably, it feels like the perfect sci-fi origin story. Deming was a child science prodigy, and she started working in a UCSF lab when she was only 12 years old.
Yeah, good sci-fi origin story for her. It sounds like she's been doing this for quite a while. And it seems interesting that they've kind of brought their sights to cryonics. So what exactly do they do with cryonics?
Yeah, so they are saying that they're essentially making a pause button for biology. That's how they're phrasing it. And they're focusing for now on 3 medical use cases. So the first is cryopreserving slices of human brain tissue, and that would let neuroscientists and researchers access brain samples at any time. Typically, they're using rodent tissue samples because it's almost impossible to, on demand get a slice of human brain. So this would be a big change for researchers and allow them to have access to those samples wherever they need it. Second is on freezing donated organs. And that's a big deal because the organ donation and matching process is really difficult and also extremely time sensitive. So that would kind of completely change the game if we removed the time sensitivity altogether, which freezing in theory could. And lastly, many patients die from diseases that don't have cures yet. I think, talk about that all the time with family members, with people in the news. It doesn't mean that there never will be a cure, but again, life is very time sensitive. So in theory, cryonics could preserve a patient's entire body who was suffering from a certain disease and then unthaw them once the cure had been invented.
Okay. So it escalated, I think, every every reason why they're doing this. And that is definitely the zenith of it, with freezing people until there's a cure for the disease they have, which, I'm sure that's going to be an expensive bill. We talked about previously on the show a few times of people that have actually froze themselves in order to escape something, probably death. So there's all these possibilities, and especially kind of in the organ transplant area, it seems like something that's very applicable. So after starting recently, how much is the startup valued at, and how much funding have they been able to grasp?
Yeah, so they've been working essentially in stealth mode for the last 3 years, and they've just made their work publicly known, but they have already raised $48 million in funding. As you said, we've talked a lot of longevity space in general. There are startups approaching the longevity space in many different ways. I think what we know for sure is there is a big appetite here for living longer, however that looks, whether it is preventing disease to begin with or pressing the pause button on your life until that disease has a cure. But clearly investors are very interested in the space.
Yeah. And, we've heard for quite a while, whether it be through kind of movies or science experiments, just about cryonics and freezing people for a long period of time. Is this kind of the latest wave in it? Are we not really even there yet to be able to freeze people?
Yeah, so what we're all the most familiar with, it does exist in some forms, and that's in vitro fertilization for the most part. We're talking about tiny embryos, so it's a completely different scale, but the embryos are dipped in the cryoprotectant solution, then into liquid nitrogen, and then they can be stored for kind of as long as you need them to be until they're ready to be used. So it does exist in some forms that have been used for quite some time. And more recently, even at the University of Minnesota, researchers were able to cryopreserve rat kidneys. So we're ramping up here to the full body, but it needs to start somewhere. So we were starting small with embryos, and now we're experimenting with animal organs. And ultimately, Cradle is looking to just scale this tech all the way up to a full human body, which is clearly much trickier for many reasons.
Yeah. And in the spirit of starting small, I'm guessing that they're not having a lot of human brain slices to freeze and to work with. So what are they using in the interim?
Yeah, for now they're working on rodent brain slices, but they have successfully cooled and rewarmed a sample, and the sample did retain the electrical activity in the neurons. So that is proof that this could actually work. It's a much smaller, maybe simpler brain, but that is a sign that they might be on the right track to eventually get to human organs and then ultimately maybe to the entire body.
Yeah. And what are some potential blockers for something like this? Where do the problems kind of start to arise?
Yeah, I think in looking into this, the two main problems come up with cryonics. One is that the ice crystals from the freezing process can damage or ruin cells themselves, which defeats the entire purpose, obviously, because then even if you can thaw, you have more problems than you went in with. And then the other big issue is that the cryoprotectants themselves that can stop the crystallization process are often extremely toxic. So those are two big obstacles in the way, because obviously the idea here is to preserve the body in the best state possible and to resume living with no additional damage. So those would be two of the main threats to the process. But Cradle feels that they can work around that.
Mm-hmm. And given kind of the public conversation and the scientific discourse around this, are there any other companies that are trying to do a similar thing?
Yeah, I think the most well-known example is Alcor Life Extension Foundation. They went straight to the human bodies, and they have more than 200 bodies and heads and some pets frozen in HQ. The problem there is that none of them have been revived yet. So I think Cradle seems to be, kind of taking a different approach, starting small, working their way up. But very curious to watch this space and how this all unfolds. It would obviously have massive ramifications for pretty much everybody. A small few to start, obviously, but it is very futuristic, a little creepy, and it is happening.
Yeah, definitely futuristic, definitely creepy, and fascinating to see the different approaches, as you mentioned, on both sides, with one company kind of working as they can, starting with rats, kind of working their way up, while on the other hand, you have those that just kind of went for it. And I think I'm most excited to see when Alcor Life Extension throw out their first person, and also where Cradle is by then. And maybe they'll be in a similar place, but I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, definitely scary. So thank you for the nightmares. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And hopefully the first thawed person, we can get them on the podcast. I'm very curious to ask them a few questions.
That would be great. Are you cold?
Exactly.
All right, and that'll do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you tomorrow.